his presentation, Run and Do Not Grow Weary, Acknowledging and Managing Digital Fatigue. I fully recognize that this probably would have been a great presentation to have at the end of the day, but sometimes that's not how scheduling works out when we're dealing with 4 different time zones and 8 different presenters. But I'm excited that Keith will be able to join us. So I am excited and thrilled that Keith is here. And let's give him a virtual round of applause.
Thanks, Sarah. It's great to be here and great to be with everybody this morning. I'm just going to pull up my slides for us right now, and we can get started. Today's topic is digital fatigue, and something we've been talking about for a while. We didn't realize it would be quite so poignant in what we're experiencing, both with COVID-19 and also protests that are happening around the country and around the world, and keeping track and keeping touch and keeping care with our communities of faith and also our neighbors in need in this time. And I wanted to share this meme that I made a while ago. Damn it, Jim, I'm a pastor, not in IT department. Actually didn't make it for this experience. It was one some time ago, but I came back to it as a way to say that a lot of us right now are doing a lot of digital work that we didn't sign up for, that we didn't expect to do, or that we expected to do over a long period of time and roll out over a long period of time. Rather than having to do it when quarantine hit and have to figure out how to do online worship in whatever way we're doing it, how to care for our congregations and our communities, how to advocate. And so first, I just want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank you for all the ministry that you're doing in this time. It is really a Herculean effort. And I've been amazed to see ways in which ministry leaders are reaching out and supporting their people. And I just want to thank you for all the work that has gone into making that happen. So as we begin this day, we're talking about weariness, we're talking about fatigue, and I think we're all bearing some level of that. So I want to acknowledge that. I want to thank you for the work that you're doing. And I hope that in this short time, I can share some tips and tricks and perspectives that might help you to sustain yourself through this time. Certainly as we look ahead, the digital work that we're doing will continue to be part of our ministries in some way moving forward, even as things begin to reopen. So the time and effort and energy and learning that you're putting in and also by being here today is going to benefit your people, not just in this short-term period that we find ourselves in, but I think over the long term as well. So thank you. We know we're fatigued. We are living through a crisis. We're having to learn new skills, but it's nice to receive some affirmation about that. And we came across this article from the Wall Street Journal about how just being on Zoom meetings all the time is fatiguing in itself, that physiologically it's draining to be connecting with people just on Zoom or whatever video conferencing platform that you use. They said the affliction that's come to be known as Zoom fatigue is way more than a byproduct of too many meetings. Social scientists say it's the result of the sudden mass adoption of technology that's disrupting the normal and instinctual and finely tuned way of communicating that developed to help humans survive. So we've had to shift away from that face-to-face and into the digital space. Everything just takes longer, it takes more time, it takes more coordination, and there's always that little pause on Zoom where everybody's starting to try to talk over each other, and it can be wearying. But this is not just an issue of technology, it's not just an issue of this moment, right? Fatigue, burnout, exhaustion, weariness, right? That is also part of the experience of doing ministry. And I continue to come back to a quote that was shared with me by my friend and ministry supervisor back in divinity school, Tad Meyer, who said to me, ministry will take everything you've got if you let it. And it will. And I've certainly had bouts of perhaps not total burnout, but brownout perhaps, so I speak from some experience of digital fatigue and also ministry fatigue. Ministry will take everything we've got if we let it. And that's the danger, but also the if we let it part is an important piece of that we have to do the best we can to set boundaries, to care for ourselves so that we can care for others. And so we've got a ministry challenge. That ministry will take everything we've got if we let it. And we have a technology challenge that we're living in this time when we're always on, when there's always more to do, when the realm of possibility and what we can do is actually more than what we were doing face to face, because we had established programs or patterns or worship that we were working within the container of. And now, there's a lot that's not possible, but there is a lot more that is possible. And there's this urgent feeling that I've experienced, that my staff has experienced, that as I've talked to other ministry leaders, they've experienced, that there's this sense of anxiety about wanting to provide for our people, and to do everything possible to have them have a sense of connection and normalcy and care, and really kind of recognize what are our limitations in this time for our congregation has been a real challenge. And to be able to say no, or not yet, or that's a great idea, but what we can do is this part of this for now. So ministry and technology will both eat us alive if we let them. So just a little bit about my journey. This is a picture of me. 1 year ago, I was walking the Camino de Santiago de Compostela. And this is, I'm with my friends Susan and Felicity from New Zealand here along one of our legs. I walked the Portuguese route over a couple weeks to Santiago. And this was part of a sabbatical I took last summer. I've been doing digital ministry in some fashion for about 12 years, since about 2008. And I've been writing and researching and presenting about digital media for probably 10 years since I got started. And so I've spent a lot of time doing technology, digital ministry, digital projects, a lot of stuff online. And part of the sabbatical, the intention in the plan was to unplug and decompress and step away from digital. So before I left, I deleted so many apps from my phone. I just took what was necessary, mainly my Google Maps and Camino apps to find my way to Santiago. And coming back, so that's at the end of last summer, coming back from my sabbatical, I had really been much more disciplined and careful with media. So I kept a lot of social media off my phone, like Facebook, I accessed on my desktop but not on my phone. I deleted my Twitter accounts. I really pared down my digital footprint, and I found it to be a much healthier relationship for me between myself and the technology that I really do enjoy using, that I find a lot of creative outlet in, and that I use in ministry. But I felt, and it took a sabbatical to reset my relationship with technology. But then life, of course, gets a little busier, and ministry coming home gets busier, but I was still doing pretty well. And then the pandemic hit, and all the apps went back on my phone, and I'm checking news constantly. And it's, it's like this line from The Godfather Part 3, I was out and they keep pulling me back in. And so I'm at least as plugged in as I was before, and perhaps even, maybe more than before, between having to produce online worship, having to keep track of my parishioners, keeping track of the news and news updates, which is only accelerated, over the last week, that it's very difficult in this time to be boundaried around our use of technology, not because we're trying to abuse it, but because we want to know and we want to care. Just as I would say, just as the pandemic was hitting our congregation. This is the middle of March, like so many congregations were figuring out what we were going to do. We decided to close. We pulled a online worship service together in a few days, and we got going, and we've been going for a couple weeks. And I'll share with you that I had a panic attack, and I had to go to the hospital because I thought I was having a heart attack, and I'd never experienced anything like that before. And it was a real wake-up call for me to take better care of myself and to pace myself for the long journey that we're on with the pandemic and also our work for justice. And so I'm speaking out of fatigue of something that's been very present for me in this time, in which every day I'm aware that if I push it too hard, I could wind up in the same place. If I let ministry or the technology consume me, I can be in a very compromised place and not being able to care for the people in my charge at my church the way that I want to be able to do that. So I hope as we think about all the possibilities and the wonderment of the technology that's available to us and how we'll go about implementing these ideas throughout this day, in some ways this presentation would have made more sense to have at the end, but to say at the beginning, you don't have to do everything you hear today. You don't have to do it all at once. We each have our own capacities and thresholds for being able to do this ministry in this time, and to please take care of yourself and pace yourself and do what you're able. And what you're able to do is more than you think it is. It means more to people than it feels like. And it's hard when you can't get that immediate feedback from people, but it means so much. So please take care of yourself and sustain yourself in this time. What I wanted to share with you are some kind of small picture and big picture ways of approaching managing your relationship to technology and digital fatigue. In some ways it's a given that we're all experiencing that fatigue right now, but how can we kind of alleviate the burden? For many people, the work in digital ministry that we're doing is entirely new, or the volume of digital ministry that we're doing is so much higher. And that takes a lot of energy to do things for the first time and learn them and get them up and running and explain them and communicate them, and to manage our anxiety and the anxiety of our people. So I'm going to share some technical hacks, and then I'm going to share some more of adaptive suggestions for you. So the first is that if you don't have a workflow, that I really recommend you think of a workflow that works for you, whatever that is. I use file sharing, like I love Dropbox, but there are plenty of other file sharing possibilities like iCloud or other things, Office 365, to make your work and share your work more easily, so it's not a zillion attachments in your email. That sounds like a tiny thing, and why would you come to eFormation to hear that? But it really does wind up taking a lot of time. So there are a lot of tasks that we wind up doing that are repetitive over and over and over again. There's a lot more digital content that we've got to handle in this time and figure out how we get it in the right places and to the right people. And I think we've been in such a rush of trying to make these things happen that maybe this summertime is a chance to step back a little bit and say, how can this workflow work better for me? Whether it's file sharing or taking your time to organize your files. You know, I have a giant junk file, my downloads file on my Mac, and it's just like my junk drawer. But I try to then take time to get those things in the right places. It just saves time in the end. Maybe this is a time to invest in software that is going to work better for you, because your time is valuable. We often don't take into account the time that it takes us. We look at the cost of the software or the cost of subscriptions, but your time is valuable. And if are programs that are going to save you time and make your life easier and free you up to do more ministry, that might be worth looking at this summer. Small thing, I use a password manager. I like 1Password. There are other password managers with more and more platforms and logins, and being remote. I like to have a password manager that saves all my passwords so I don't have to remember them, go find them. I would consider this summer learning new programs and technology as part of your continuing education. I did this a couple years ago. I wanted to learn more about video production So I took an online class on Final Cut Pro so I could do some video projects that I was working on that Final Cut and worked better for it. So you might think if your continuing education is kind of like, you know, the conference you go to, the workshops you would have attended, the retreats you would have done have dried up. There are an incredible amount of online courses on anything and everything related to technology. And you might consider that this summer as a way of helping you to save time and develop your skills so that things will work more smoothly for you. I recommend planning in advance for how you're going to repurpose your content. So if you do an online worship service, how are you sharing that? Are you putting that on a website somehow? Are you capturing that? If you're offering some online educational gatherings, are you recording that? Are you making that then available for people later on? Which is really to say, get the most you possibly can out of your content. You know, are people recording music for your online worship services? Is that on your YouTube channel? So finding ways to make the time that you're investing in content creation, which takes, in my experience, the most amount of time to do, how can you get the most value and purpose out of that? Not just in the moment, but on an ongoing basis. At my church, we're about to launch a new website that's going to help us to foreground a lot of the digital content that we're in the process of creating, so people can experience worship, they can watch or listen to an educational program. So give that content, you're investing so much time in, a long life and a long tail. And assess and build out your own digital platform. So as we look ahead to the fall, it just feels like we're going to be in this place of continuing to be a hybrid church where there is some in-person, but there's also online. So thinking now about how your website could work better for you, thinking now about if you have to put content for your educational programming online, what would that look like? Like using a learning management system like a Google Classroom to make things available for your students, for your learners, is a good possibility. So a lot of us just are working with sometimes antiquated, sometimes insufficient digital platforms and foundation that we were just dealing with and worked okay for the moment. But with more demands, the summer could be a time to think about building out a digital platform, which in the end will help to save time and I think help meet the needs of our communities. So, and now sort of kind of zooming out just a little bit in terms of thinking about digital fatigue and our relationship with technology. One of the most, maybe the most important thing for me in thinking about how I relate to technology is to focus on creating and not just consuming, because a lot of times, you know, I'm doing something, I'm writing something, I'm doing email, and then, you know, it's 2 clicks and I'm on Facebook or, you know, Instagram for 15 minutes. And it's like, when did that happen? So what I try to do is, am I creating something here? Am I writing? Am I doing a slide? Am I putting together a video? You know, that includes like, I'm creating by putting a Facebook Live out. I'm creating by writing a pastoral message to my congregation. I'm creating by using Canva to create images for our website or for our publications. So am I creating or am I just consuming? And that has helped me to kind of draw a line to say, I'm on here to create and I feel good about that. It's purposeful, it creates value, not just kind of flitting around, clicking link after link and just consuming and commenting. That's been an important distinction for me and helps me to stay focused. I would ask you to consider what you uniquely bring to digital ministry. So in the whole realm of possibilities of all the digital platforms that you can do, what is the unique thing that you bring to it? Is it writing? Is it photographs? Is it artistry? Is it music? what is the thing that you uniquely bring? Because I feel like there's a lot of pressure for people to do all the things. And especially when we see all the amazing stuff that ministry leaders are putting on social media right now, it really kind of fills me with a little envy of all the things that people are able to do, or the ways that they do them. And I can't do it the way they do it. And I can't use that platform the way that they use it. So what can you uniquely bring, and what would amplify your voice? What platform works best for you to share that, whether it's still images, or it's video, or it's text and writing? Find the thing that will help to amplify your voice. You don't have to do it like anybody else or everybody else. You do it the way that you do it, and I think that brings a level of authenticity that communicates strongly to people. Start where you are. You don't have to do it all. You should not do it all, and you can grow into it. I like to say in digital spaces, we are learning out loud in public is how it feels. And that's really not necessarily comfortable for ministry leaders who are used to having their lessons plans buttoned up, their sermons buttoned up, their music buttoned up. And so we're learning out loud in public. That also adds to the authenticity of what people are experiencing when we're encountering them in digital spaces, but it allows us to grow and learn by trial and error. And digital ministry is all about trial and error. It's not about having it right before you launch. It's just about doing it as you can do it, and then learning as you grow. And I hope that in the last couple of months with the quarantine and online church and online offerings, you've experienced that in a short period of time, we've gotten up to speed on some technologies, and we've kind of refined how we're doing things by the feedback we're getting from our people. I would encourage you to cultivate non-digital hobbies, practice digital Sabbath, and nurture your physical health. One of my problems with technology is that all my hobbies involve technology. I have very few hobbies that don't involve some kind of technology, because a lot of my hobbies are around, it's a lot of what I like to do is write, which puts me on a keyboard, which puts me on a screen. So cultivate non-digital hobbies. Swimming is great because you can't take your phone with you. When you go for a walk, leave your phone at home if you're able. Adopt a digital rule of life. A digital rule of life I write about in the Digital Cathedral, but I'll share a resource with our digital ministry toolkit, which has some great guidance for putting together a digital rule of life. A digital rule of life can help you kind of set some guardrails for yourself that are based not just in functionalities, but in your faith about how you will be present and relate to digital technologies. So a digital rule of life can help you to clarify what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and when you need to stop doing it and take a digital Sabbath. I find it's been really hard in this time to say no, or I've found it easier to say not now. So when we're thinking about the kinds of ministries we're offering at our church and maybe offering at our church this summer, there's a real pull to want to do everything and to throw in as much as we can into what we're offering. And really, simplicity is really important in this time in terms of our own capacity and capability, but also in terms of our people's threshold for what they're able to sustain, as we're all hitting a Zoom fatigue wall and kids are finishing school, and you know, we're kind of trying to take a less is more approach to our summer, but some things are just not in our capacity to do at the moment, and that's just a fact. But they may be in our capacity later on once we start small and we see how it goes and we learn. So not now has kind of been my mantra. What can we do? And then maybe we'll be able to grow into it. And I would encourage you to be thinking not just in the kind of reactivity of the moment and the rush of the moment, but think about this summer building and planning for the long haul. So how can we take what we've learned and be investing the time, energy, and learning that we've made already and will continue to make and we're investing in today? How can we play that out for the long haul? The digital things we're learning now can help us later on, even, you know, please God, after there's a vaccine and we are through this pandemic, that these things will continue, already have been, and will continue to be part of our lives. So think about the long haul. I would just point you with some of these items to our digital literacy toolkit. That's the link, digitalliteracytoolkit.org. This was put together by Kyle Oliver and Stacey Williams Duncan, and it really encapsulates beautifully in these 7 literacies how we can kind of step back and be more reflective on our digital practices as ministry leaders. And those 7 areas are really clarifying, you know, where am I strong? Where could I grow? And the toolkit has a description of each one. It has, so as a description of each one, it has examples from different ministry leaders of how they've approached those. And that's a really good place to go. It has information on creating a digital rule of life as well. And we can put that link in the chat. Finally, I just want to share this video. It's a 1-minute video from Steve Jobs. And it's a video I come back to a lot, especially when I'm feeling burned out. He talks about the importance of keeping your passion kindled. And for me, it's been a rule, a kind of a piece of wisdom for my ministry and also in my digital ministry, that it's really hard. And how do we keep our passions for this work kindled, even as it, you know, threatens to consume us or deplete us, even though it makes us weary and fatigued. So there's Steve Jobs on keeping your passion kindled.
I'm wondering what would be the single most valuable piece of advice you'd give us to even attempt to create some of the value that you guys have done in both your very impressive companies.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing, and it's totally true. And the reason is because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, if you're not having fun doing it, and you don't really love it, you're going to give up. And that's what happens to most people, actually. If you really look at the ones that ended up, you know, being successful, unquote, in the eyes of society, and the ones that didn't, oftentimes it's the ones that are successful loved what they did so they could persevere when it got really tough. And the ones that didn't love it quit because they're sane, right? Who would want to put up with this stuff if you don't love it? So it's a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of worrying constantly. And if you don't love it, you're going to fail. So you got to love it. You got to have passion.
My hope and prayer for all of you is that in this time you will find ways to take care of yourself, that you will find ways to keep your passion kindled through the ministry you're doing, or through Sabbath time or other pursuits. I thank you for your ministry and all that you're doing for God's people and the world in this time. And stay safe and be well, and take care of yourselves. And thank you.